The tension inside the CNN debate studio was thick enough to cut with a blade. Under the scorching heat of the stage lights, two of the most talked-about figures in American politics sat across from each other, preparing for a televised clash that would shake the nation to its core. On one side sat Karoline Leavitt, 27 years old, blonde, poised and lethal in debate. Once the youngest White House press secretary under Donald Trump, now a congressional candidate with a smile sharp enough to draw blood. Clad in her signature navy blazer, she exuded polished confidence. Her eyes glittered with ambition. She had not come to talk, she had come to fight. Across from her sat Denzel Washington. Not the Hollywood icon people assumed, but the real man. Beneath the legacy, decorated military veteran, former federal prosecutor, national security strategist. He had moved in silence through the world's loudest storms, and now, under those blinding lights, he represented a different vision of American strength, one that was earned, not inherited. What happened in the next 30 seconds would be replayed endlessly. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was undeniable. It changed everything. Mr. Washington Leavitt began, her tone sugary smooth but lined with venom. Maybe it's time you stopped pretending to understand American values and went back to wherever you came from. The words didn't just land, they detonated. A collective gasp swept the room. Anderson Cooper froze. Across the country, millions leaned forward. Social media exploded in real time, calling it the most openly racist statement ever made on live television by a major candidate. But Denzel didn't flinch. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't blink. He just looked at her with that stillness that makes people uncomfortable. The stillness of someone who has nothing left to prove. What he said next didn't just dismantle her campaign, it exposed a truth about the country. One it could no longer ignore. Before we go further, remember, this wasn't just a debate. It was a reckoning. One career would unravel. One would rise, and America would be forced to ask itself, who gets to call this nation theirs? To understand the magnitude of this moment, you need to know who these two figures really were, what they stood for. Karoline Leavitt's rise had been meteoric. Raised in a working-class Catholic family in New Hampshire, she projected small-town grit and conservative fire. After graduating from St. Anselm College, she joined Trump's communications team at 24. Sharp, relentless, and unwaveringly loyal, she quickly became a darling of right-wing media. To Trump, she wasn't just a staffish, she was a loyalist. When the press got ugly, she held the line. Critics called her a mouthpiece. Supporters hailed her as the future. She didn't just advocate for policy, she carried the legacy of America first, with the promise of a new generation of hardline conservatism. Denzel Washington's path could not have been more different. Born in Mount Vernon, New York. 2. Working-class parents, a Pentecostal minister, and a hair salon owner, he didn't inherit a legacy. He built one. He enlisted, he served, he bled. After the military, he studied law and joined the DOJ. He prosecuted cartel leaders and domestic terrorists. He served in war zones and intelligence briefings where life and death hung in balance, and he did it without fanfare. Real patriots, he believed, don't need applause. Trump himself had tapped Denzel for national security roles not because he was loud, but because he got results. When Trump later nominated him to lead the FBI, the backlash was swift. Not because of incompetence, his record was spotless, but because some couldn't accept that a black man with power, loyalty, and independent thought didn't fit their mold. And on that stage, Leavitt made the same mistake. She underestimated him, and she would pay the price. The debate began quietly. Enough. Anderson Cooper opened with standard questions: border policy, national security. Leavitt went first. We need leaders who put America first, she said confidently. Our borders are open, our laws ignored. Americans are suffering. Denzel followed, his tone grounded. I've spent decades identifying threats to this nation: cartels, terror cells, foreign interference. You don't protect America by creating fear, you protect it by confronting facts. Then came the shift. Cooper asked about immigration policy during the Trump years. Leavitt pounced. We need people in government, she said, locking eyes with Denzel, whose loyalty to America is beyond question. Some audience members stiffened. I believe my record speaks for itself, Denzel replied, still calm. I've saved lives. Put terrorists behind bars. I've bled for this country. If that's not loyalty, I'm not sure what is. But Leavitt wasn't done. It's easy to say you're loyal, she snapped. But real Americans don't need to prove it. It's in their blood. The silence was deafening. Denzel's jaw tensed briefly. Then he responded. Are you suggesting American citizenship is a matter of ancestry, not sacrifice or service? Didn't retreat. I'm saying, she said coolly. Some of us feel America in our bones. Others, they have to learn it from books. There it was. That quiet insult dressed in smiles. And it had just gone national. Denzel stared at her, unmoving. Miss Leavitt, he said, voice even. You should be very careful about the road you're going down. She didn't stop. Maybe she didn't understand, or maybe she didn't care. You've served this country, and I respect that, she said. But there's a difference between serving America and understanding it. Some of us were born knowing. Others will always be trying to prove they belong. Denzel sat still. The weight of her words hung in the air. Then he nodded. I see. He said softly. So you believe American identity lives in bloodlines, not actions? Leavitt's smile faltered, just a little. That's an interesting stance, he continued. For someone who claims to support the Constitution, Leavitt tried to respond, but Denzel wasn't finished. He leaned forward. Since we're discussing who belongs in this country, he said, let me tell you a story. She blinked. Her confidence wavered. It's about my family, he said. And about yours. He pulled out a manila folder. You see, I've spent years in intelligence. I know how to find facts, so I did my homework. He opened the folder. My parents came here in 1970 with nothing but faith and grit. My father drove cabs, worked security, cleaned buildings. My mother looked after other people's children. They never asked for favors. Just a chance. The studio was silent. When I was old enough, I served, I fought, I prosecuted. I've risked my life to protect Americans without needing the spotlight. Because that's what real loyalty looks like. He looked directly at the camera. So when you tell someone like me to go back, you're talking to every family who ever believed in this country. Applause rippled, but Denzel raised his hand. I'm not done. He held up another document. Miss Leavitt loves to talk about real Americans. But her family immigrated in 1892. Third-generation immigrant. Just like me, the room murmured. And here's where it gets poetic. Denzel continued, voice tightening. Her family didn't flee war. They weren't refugees. They came from Canada for work. Laughter. Leavitt paled, and it gets better. Her great-grandfather, Thomas Leavitt, was denied entry twice. Because immigration officials feared he couldn't support himself. Leavitt tried to cut in. This is irrelevant. Oh, but it's not, Denzel interrupted, because the petition that finally got him into the U.S., sponsored by an Indian-American businessman, gasps stillness. That's right. Your family got here because someone who looked like me helped them. And now, you want to close that same door behind. You, he stood. You want to talk about real Americans? The room fell silent again. Real Americans judge others by their sacrifice, not their surname. They protect freedom. They don't weaponize it. He turned back to Leavitt. You told me to go back. But my family built their life here, honestly. Gave everything. Yours did the same. The difference is, mine never forgot why they came. He paused. One final sentence. So before you question anyone's loyalty, again look in the mirror, and ask yourself, what have you done for America? He sat down, calm, controlled. Then, with the flick of a smile, I believe you had a question about border security, Anderson. The studio erupted. The debate was over, but something much bigger had just begun.